My name is Emily Hartman, and the night my marriage ended started with a light in the basement. I should have been 3 states away finishing a late dinner with colleagues and complaining about hotel pillows. Instead, I sat in my car in front of my own house at 12:43 a.m., staring at a basement window glowing like a secret someone forgot to hide. Then I heard it, a woman's laugh. Not a laugh from a TV show, a real one. Soft, sweet, confident, like she belonged in my home. My heart didn't break, it froze. I turned off the engine. Silence swallowed everything except that laugh. I slipped off my heels to keep the gravel quiet and walked across my own driveway barefoot like a stranger. Betrayal makes you do strange things, makes your house feel like someone else's. Inside, everything looked normal. Normal is the cruelest disguise. Mail neatly stacked, Mark's jacket on the chair, coffee smell still fresh in the air. But down the hallway, light spilled from under the basement door. Music floated up, jazz, soft, romantic, meant for 2. I put my hand on the doorknob, took a breath, opened it. Warm light revealed a life I didn't recognize. Wine glasses, a candle burning low, our couch, a blanket we picked together, and then them. Sophie, wearing his sweatshirt, bare legs tucked under my blanket. Mark's hand on her thigh, his smile relaxed and young, a version of him I thought had died with our baby. She saw me first. Her face drained, her voice a ghost mark. He turned, his eyes blew wide with guilt. And I learned what heartbreak really sounds like, a soft gasp from the person who betrayed you. Mark stood so fast he almost tripped over the wine bottle. Emily, wait, this isn't... He couldn't even finish the lie. It collapsed under his own breath. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just said, I'm home. My voice was calm, too calm. It scared him more than if I'd thrown the candle at his head. Emily, let me explain, he tried again. No, I said, you can speak, but you can't explain. Sophie pulled the blanket tighter around her bare legs, suddenly aware she was half naked in another woman's house. You should leave, I told her, voice flat as winter. I didn't think you'd be home, she whispered. That's obvious. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. She scrambled up the stairs, hugging her purse like a shield. The front door opened, then slammed. Now it was just the 2 of us in the basement we built with dreams that apparently expired. Mark inhaled sharply, searching for the right script. We've been distant, ever since... everything. He didn't say the word, but I heard it anyway. Miscarriage. My stomach tightened, not from grief, from rage that he dared use my pain as his parachute. You weren't there, I said. Not then, and definitely not now. He flinched, guilt flickering across his face like a dying bulb. I didn't know how to help you. So you helped yourself to someone easier, I cut in. The silence after was brutal. I stepped closer until he could smell the truth on my breath. You burned the life we built together. I'm just noticing the smoke. His eyes darted between me and the stairs like escape existed. Get dressed, I said. You're leaving tonight. Shock, fear, panic. And for the first time in months, I felt strong. I didn't wait for his response. I walked upstairs with steady steps, each one separating me from the version of Emily who begged for scraps of affection. That woman had died long before I opened that basement door. I grabbed the suitcase from the guest room closet and tossed it at his feet. Pack, leave. That was the deal. Emily, please, we can fix this, he said, voice cracking. No, I replied, you can fix the mess you made, but not here, not with me. I crossed my arms, not to protect myself, but to keep from punching the truth into his ribs. He kept talking, his words tumbling like excuses falling downstairs. Stress, loneliness, feeling neglected. All while he stood there wearing the evidence of his betrayal. You didn't lose the baby alone, he whispered like a broken apology. But I grieved alone, I answered. That shut him up. He stared down at the floor as if answers hid in the grain of the hardwood. But answers weren't his problem. Accountability was. He slowly gathered his clothes from the couch belt, still undone shirt, still wrinkled from someone else's hands. Each movement looked like a confession. He zipped the suitcase and finally met my eyes again. What am I supposed to do now? You walk out, I said, and tomorrow you deal with the consequences. He swallowed hard. Fear, real fear. Because he knew something that no cheater wants to remember. I am smart, I am calm, and I know exactly where every dollar in our marriage lives. He hesitated near the door. I still love you, he said softly, as if love could erase betrayal. I inhaled steady and cold. No, I said, you love comfort, and I stopped being comfortable. He looked like those words bruised him good. He stepped outside, the door clicked shut, and I locked it. The silence after the lock clicked was the loudest sound I had ever heard. My body expected collapse, shaking hands, falling to the floor, sobbing until my ribs ached, but none of that happened. Instead, a strange stillness washed over me. Not peace, not shock, power. I looked at the wine bottle they opened without me, a celebration I was never invited to, and poured myself a glass, the same one they had sipped from. It tasted like closure's first breath. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the basement door. That door had once led to family plans, playrooms, game nights, movie marathons with kids we never had. Now it was a crime scene, a tomb for what I thought we were. I pulled out my phone, not to call him never again on his terms. I opened my banking app instead. Every transfer, every credit card charge, every dollar I worked for, I would trace them all. He thought he'd humiliate me. He thought I'd fall apart. He thought losing the baby had turned me weak. What he didn't know was the moment I lost the future I was carrying inside me, I promised myself never to lose me again. My fingertips hovered over contacts, not friends, not family. I scrolled to Attorney Keller and Brooke, the woman who helped one of my co-workers through her divorce. Not yet, but soon. Because revenge isn't rage, it's paperwork. I took another sip of wine, letting it burn a promise into my throat. Tonight I lost a husband. Tomorrow he will lose everything else. I stood, walked over to the basement light switch and flipped it off. Darkness swallowed what remained of the betrayal. That place no longer owned me. I went upstairs to sleep in a bed finally free of lies, not peacefully, but with purpose. And for the first time since the miscarriage, I felt alive. I woke up before the sun, not because I couldn't sleep, but because purpose doesn't need rest. The space beside me was empty, not just tonight, for months. I had been lying next to a stranger long before I caught him in the basement. I made coffee like I always do, except this morning I didn't make 2 cups. The mug felt lighter in my hand. The house did too. I checked the lock once more, not for safety, for satisfaction. Mark didn't call, didn't text. Maybe he thought I would calm down by morning, return to the old rhythm, pretend the night before never happened. He underestimated the version of me he created. I opened my laptop and started collecting facts like a hunter gathers weapons. Bank statements, credit card logins, insurance policies, business deductions he claimed but never explained, Venmo notes he thought I'd never see. Every number told a story, and that story belonged to me now. Around 9, a group text pinged the weekly brunch update from my sister, her photos of nieces eating pancakes. Life outside betrayal always looks so unbroken. I typed busy today, rain check. I didn't have the energy to translate heartbreak into small talk. By noon, I had printed a stack of transactions, cash withdrawals near his office, restaurant receipts with only 2 entrees, hotel charges 3 towns over. He wasn't just cheating emotionally. He was stealing from our marriage to fund his fantasy. I slid everything into a neat folder. It felt like holding truth, heavy but clean. The front door rattled. Not knocking, a key turning. Mark. Of course he still had keys. Of course he walked in like nothing had changed. Emily. His voice carried false hope. I didn't answer. He found me at the dining table, papers spread like crime scene photos. His smile collapsed. What is all of this? Your affair, I said, and your financing plan. His face drained. Mark looked from the papers to me and back again. He finally understood that the damage wasn't emotional anymore. It was legal. "I can explain," he whispered. There it was again, his favorite sentence. I stood keeping the folder between us like a shield. "No, you can't. You already had your explanation night. This is the aftermath." He reached out a hand like he thought he could still touch me. I stepped back. "You think you're the victim?" he said, voice cracking. "Ever since the miscarriage." The folder snapped shut in my hands, not violently, precisely. "Be careful," I told him. "The only thing more dangerous than a grieving woman is one who's done grieving." His mouth opened, then shut like he bit his own tongue. "You want to punish me?" he asked. "Fine, hate me, but don't destroy both of us." "You destroyed us. I'm just making sure you don't keep the house." The look in his eyes shifted from guilt to fear. I walked to the kitchen, poured coffee, slowly not offering him any. He followed like a man approaching a lion who looks too calm. "What now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "you move out completely. You pay your share. You cooperate." "And if I don't?" I took a breath, steady, lethal. "Then I take everything. And you can go live with the woman who wears your clothes but can't afford her own." That one landed hard. He sat down, rubbing his face, looking suddenly older. "I never meant to hurt you," he murmured. "Intent doesn't erase impact," I said, "or evidence." His phone buzzed. Sophie's name flashed bright. His body locked up. He declined the call. I didn't react, and the lack of reaction scared him more than a scream ever could. "I'll get the rest of my things tonight," he finally said. "No," I corrected. "I'll box them. You'll pick them up from the porch." He swallowed, defeated. "Emily, is this really the end?" I sipped my coffee, bitter, strong, honest. It was over before you noticed. And for the first time, he had to sit with that truth alone. When the door finally shut behind him, the house exhaled like it had been holding its breath as long as I had. I stacked the paperwork neatly. I wasn't done, not even close. But I had momentum now, and momentum is a kind of revenge, too. I opened a fresh notebook, not the one filled with memories or plans for a nursery, a new one, with a new purpose. I made 3 lists. 1. Assets house, joint savings, retirement accounts, investments. I chose and he took credit for. 2. Leverage screenshots of texts, expenses linked to Sophie financial misconduct within marriage, proof of infidelity on home property. 3. My future. This list started empty, but emptiness can be full of potential. My phone buzzed my sister again. "Megan, how's the trip? Right." I typed back the truth for once. "Me, I'm not in New Jersey." Mark cheated, handling it. Her reply came fast. "Megan, where are you? I'll come." I stared at those words, the safety in them, but I didn't want comfort. I wanted control. "Me, I'm okay. I'll call you tonight." I wasn't okay, but I was capable. I spent the next hour installing a security camera at the basement door and the main entrance. Not because I feared him, but because evidence doesn't lie. Then I noticed something. A spot on the dining chair, lip gloss, not my shade. My pulse didn't spike. I simply photographed it, date and time stamped. Evidence. There was a strange power in that word. Mark had always said I overanalyzed, that I made everything into numbers and charts. He never understood it was how I survived. People lie, numbers don't. The doorbell rang. I looked through the camera feed on my phone. Flowers. A delivery guy holding a bouquet so big it looked like apology grew on vines. The card read, "I'm so sorry. I love you. Please talk to me. Mark." I placed the flowers on the floor, took a photo. Then I dropped the bouquet straight into the trash bin. Not dramatic, necessary. The camera captured everything. Then I sat at the head of the table, his chair, and opened my laptop again. He chose the battleground, but I would choose the terms. The afternoon passed quietly, too quietly. Betrayal has an echo even when the house is silent. You can hear what was done to you. But silence also gives you room to think. I opened one more tab on my laptop, a real estate course. Short, intensive. the kind that helps people turn houses into profit. Mark used to joke I could never survive in the business world because I overthink everything. Turns out, overthinking is just planning smarter than your enemies. When the sun started dipping low, the air shifted. Not ominous, focused. I showered, washed off the last of his touch, and put on real clothes. Not pajamas, not grief wear. A navy blouse and pressed slacks. Confidence disguised as fabric. The doorbell rang. Not flowers this time. Mark. I didn't rush. I opened the door just enough for him to see I wasn't trembling anymore. He looked damaged. Hair messy. Eyes red. Like reality finally found him. I booked a motel, he said. Good. My voice didn't rise or fall. It stayed dangerously level. I need some stuff, he added, gesturing vaguely. I handed him a sealed box taped tight. Label mark fragile. I meant his ego, not the contents. He peered over my shoulder, hope flickering stupidly in his eyes. Can we talk? Really talk? I stepped outside just enough to make it clear the house behind me no longer belonged to him. We will talk, I said, but only with a mediator and a lawyer present. His jaw clenched. Seriously? You made it serious. I watched that sink in. He reached out a pathetic gesture, one last attempt to touch a woman he no longer deserved. I didn't step back. I just stared until his hand fell. Good night, Mark, I said. Good luck. You'll need it. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. The words he could have said months ago had all expired. He left, for real this time. When the door clicked shut, the air shifted again. Not empty, clear. I walked into the living room, turned on every light. The house glowed as if claiming itself back. I sat down, pulled my phone toward me, and opened a new contact. Attorney Keller and Brooke Divorce and Asset Protection. My thumb hovered only a second before I pressed call. A woman answered, voice warm but sharp, a tone that sounded like victory waiting. Hello, this is Claire, she said. How can I help you? I smiled, small, deliberate. My name is Emily Hartman, I said. I'm ready to begin the process. Silence on the line, the kind that acknowledges a threshold being crossed. Let's get started, she replied. I hung up, leaned back and looked at the ceiling, the same ceiling under which my heart once died a little every night. Not anymore. Tonight wasn't about healing, it was about shifting power. And I was finally holding the pen. I didn't know healing could sound like a printer. The next morning, my house was quiet except for the steady hum of the machine, spitting out my life in black and white statements, receipts, email threads. Every time a page slid out, I felt less like a devastated wife and more like what I actually was, now someone building a case. Claire, the attorney, had emailed me a checklist after our call. Bring anything that shows spending secrecy and intent, she'd written, and Emily, don't minimize what he did. Facts first, feelings later. Facts I could do. I started with the joint accounts. I'd been the responsible one, the one who cared about where money went. He used to joke that I treated every dollar like a soldier and every bill like a war. Turns out I wasn't paranoid. I was right. There it was, 3 separate hotel charges over the last 6 months, all in towns Sophie had posted from on Instagram. A bar tab that matched the name of her workplace. Charges for dinners at places he told me were client meetings. I circled each one in red. The more I circled, the calmer I felt. At 10:30, I grabbed my keys, my folder, and a bottle of water. No crying in the bathroom, no redoing my makeup, just a quick glance in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like someone dangerous who'd just learned how to aim. Claire's office was in a converted brick building downtown. No marble, no fake plants, just clean lines and shelves full of law. She shook my hand firmly and looked me straight in the eye like she was measuring what was left of me. I'm glad you came in, she said. Most women wait until they've already agreed to things they can't undo. We sat. I handed her the folder. She opened it slowly like there might be something alive inside. As she read, her eyebrows moved in small, controlled shifts. How long have you suspected? She asked. Really suspected, I said. Last night, truly. Before that, I just felt myself disappear and couldn't name why. She nodded once. And he's out of the house now. Yes, I changed the locks this morning. I paused. I didn't ask if I was allowed. I just did it. That's fine, she said. You're in a good position. Your name is primary on the mortgage. You're the higher earner. There's clear infidelity. And he used marital funds to support the affair. She tapped the hotel receipts. That's going to matter, she added. Good, I said a little too fast. She noticed, but I didn't apologize for it. She pulled out a yellow legal pad. Tell me about children. My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. We don't have any, I said. We were pregnant once. I miscarried at 11 weeks. Claire's pen slowed. I'm sorry. I was too, I replied. He wasn't. I took a breath. After that, he stopped trying. Not just for kids, for everything. She watched my face. Did you seek medical advice? I nodded. I did. Later, he did too. After a lot of arguing, the doctor told him there were issues. But he never shared the details, just implied it was complicated and probably my body's fault. Something flickered in her eyes. Do you have access to those records, she asked. I might, I said slowly. We share an online portal for our primary care clinic. I've never logged into his side, but I could. She leaned forward. Emily, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, but if there are documents that prove he knowingly misled you about fertility or anything else that speaks to his pattern of deception, and under Pennsylvania law, patterns matter. I thought of the nights I lay awake blaming myself for a body that had failed, the shame that lived in my skin, the way he shifted distance onto me like it was my idea. If you find those, she said quietly, bring them to me. We set up a plan. Petition for divorce on grounds of infidelity, request an unequal division of assets based on fault and financial misconduct, temporary support orders while things moved through court. She talked me through it all line by line. No pity, just structure. It was the most respectful conversation I'd had in months. At the end, she asked, Are you sure you're ready for this? I thought of the basement, the laughter, the candle I bought for anniversaries burning for someone else. I'm ready, I said. I'm done negotiating with someone who set the house on fire. She smiled small and approving. Then let's begin. Back home, the house felt different. Not like a crime scene, like a headquarters. First order of business, the medical portal. My hands shook once when I typed his username. Then training took over. I'd manage payrolls and audits and end-of-year reconciliations. I could manage this. There it was, his profile, his last visit, a urology referral, lab results. For a second, I hesitated. Then I remembered his voice in the dark after the miscarriage. Maybe your body just can't hold a pregnancy, Em. Maybe this is your sign. I opened the report. The words blurred for a second, then sharpened. Low count, low motility, recommendation further evaluation for male factor infertility. Date 3 months after my miscarriage. 3 months. He knew. He knew, he knew, he knew. He knew he was the problem, and he let me carry the blame alone. The laptop screen went slightly out of focus as my eyes stung, but I didn't close it. I printed the report. The machine hummed the truth into my living room. I didn't sob. I didn't break. I sat very still and let a new kind of anger settle into my bones. Not the wild kind, the surgical kind. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was a man who watched me drown in shame while he held the life raft behind his back. I added the report to the folder. Evidence. The word felt satisfying in my mouth. The next day, Mark tried again. I saw him on the camera feed first, standing on the porch with his hands stuffed in his pockets like a teenager after curfew. I didn't open the door. I pressed the intercom button instead. What do you want, Mark? He startled at the sound of my voice through the tiny speaker. We can't keep doing this, he said. We're married, Em. We owe it to ourselves to talk. We are doing this, I said. I've retained counsel. You'll get papers soon. Already, his voice cracked. You didn't even give us a chance to work on it. You gave us all the chances I said, in the form of lies. He stepped closer to the camera. I made a mistake. One mistake doesn't last 6 months, I replied. One mistake doesn't drain accounts. One mistake doesn't require hotel loyalty points. He swallowed and tried a different tack. What about us trying again for a family? We talked about second chances, remember, adoption maybe. The words hit differently now. Second chances, family, adoption. From a man who hid his infertility and let me think I was broken. I saw your lab results, I said calmly. His face went still. What lab results? The ones that say you couldn't give us a child, I replied. The ones dated 3 months after I lost ours. He went ghost pale. You had no right. I had every right I cut in. They were about our future, and you used them to build a lie. That report is going to look very interesting next to the timeline of your affair. His jaw-clenched eyes darting like he was looking for an exit from a conversation happening on my terms for once. You're cruel, he said. That almost made me laugh. No, I said. Cruelty is letting your wife believe her body failed while you sleep with someone else in the basement of the house she paid for. He had no answer for that. Finally, he muttered, My lawyer will be in touch, like it was a threat, and walked away. Good, I said to the empty porch. Send him my regards. That night, I sat at the dining table again with my notebook and crossed out the word victim I'd written in a margin days before. Underneath it, I wrote a different word. Plaintiff. Because that's what I was now. Not a woman begging for honesty. A woman demanding justice. The storm hadn't passed, but for the first time, I wasn't standing in the middle of it alone, hoping it would spare me. I was learning how to aim the lightning. Tomorrow came faster than I expected. I woke up before the alarm mind already racing, not with panic, but with strategy, with purpose. When the hurt subsides, the clarity takes over, and clarity is lethal. First step of the day, I checked the security footage. I had installed the cameras yesterday, but now I finally opened the app to see if anything had happened overnight. Something had. The timeline showed movement at 2:17 a.m. I tapped the clip, held my breath. There he was. Mark, in a hoodie, trying to unlock the door, failing, looking around like a burglar who once lived here. He crouched down, whispering into the crack of the door, Emily, please. Babe, just let me in. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Then another figure appeared. Sophie. She came up behind him, grabbed his arm, said something sharp enough to make him flinch. Then she shoved him and walked away. He followed her like a scolded puppy. Every second recorded, every lie collapsed. I saved the clip, labeled it unauthorized return, witness present. Evidence. By 10:00 a.m., I was downtown again, this time at Mark's office. He worked at a mid-sized construction company, the kind where HR is overworked and privacy is optional. I approached the receptionist with the ease of someone who had every right to be there, because technically, I still did. Hi, I'm Emily, I said, smiling politely. I'm Mark's wife. Her eyes widened just for a moment before she masked it. Oh, he's out today. Out, yes, kicked out. That's okay, I whispered. I just need to drop off some documents to HR. He's been using our joint credit card for business dinners. I want to make sure his reimbursements are handled properly. HR loves when spouses help prevent fraud. She buzzed me right in. Inside, I found a quiet chair and placed a manila envelope on the desk. Inside were copies, not originals, of hotel receipts near Sophie's address, bar transactions, photos of Mark with wine at home during work hours, a printed copy of his client entertainment expense sheet, annotated by me. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was about consequences. The HR manager, a woman named Teresa, shuffled through the papers, pausing longer at each page. This is concerning, she said. I thought you'd want to know, I replied. She looked up. Thank you, Emily. We'll take it from here. Translation, Mark's career was collapsing from the inside. Good. As I stood to leave, someone stepped into the hallway. Sophie. Wearing corporate chic hair, 2 perfect lipsticks, still smug. Her face drained when she saw me. Emily, she breathed. I didn't break stride. I passed right by her, leaned in just enough so only she could hear. You thought he would leave me for you, I smiled, slow, cold. Oh, sweetheart, he won't even have a job for you anymore. She froze, and I walked away, heels clicking like a war drum. Outside, the air tasted cleaner, lighter. There is a unique freedom in not caring whether the person who betrayed you survives the fallout. He made his choices. Now he gets his consequences. And I get my life back. But I wasn't done. Not even close. 3 hours later, I was parked outside a brick townhouse on the edge of town, the address Sophie listed on her HR records. The place looked like a bad investment disguised as a temporary dream. I wasn't here to confront her again. I was here for something better. The camera app opened with a swipe. At 11:42 a.m., a familiar figure appeared on my screen, Mark stepping inside his girlfriend's home, wearing the same outfit he wore to plead at my porch camera hours before. I hit record. He set down his duffel bag, our gym bag, and hugged her, not passionately, desperately, like a man clinging to the last person who hasn't witnessed his collapse. They argued. She shoved him again. He raised his voice. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Beautiful. I saved the clip, label. Cohabitation evidence supports a fair timeline, plus relocation. My attorney was going to love that. I didn't knock, didn't show my face. I just drove away, leaving his world smaller than it was that morning. Back home, I spread everything across the dining table. Financial misconduct. Affair in the marital home. Secret relocation. Workplace policy violation. Medical deception. This was no longer a story of betrayal. It was a case. One he could not win. My phone buzzed. Claire again. I filed the petition. Temporary orders hearing in 14 days. Fast, efficient, surgical. I thanked her and stood looking at the room, letting each breath sharpen my resolve. Then a new text came in from an unknown number. Sophie, you think you can threaten me? I didn't do anything to you. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed one sentence. You did enough. Block. No warnings, no second chances. Not anymore. That night, I curled up on the couch under a blanket that was finally mine again. I wasn't celebrating, I was preparing. Because revenge feels good, but justice feels earned. I poured myself a glass of water. Sober victory. I wanted to feel every inch of this transformation. The woman who tiptoed home in fear 2 nights ago, she died the moment she opened that basement door. In her place stood someone new, someone who protects herself, someone who knows her worth, someone who no longer negotiates with disrespect. I turned off the lights and stared out the window at the quiet street. Storms destroy, but they also clear the air. And when I finally went to bed, I didn't lie on the edge. I lay right in the middle. The whole damn bed belongs to me now. Revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like paperwork and patience. I was sipping my morning coffee when Teresa, the HR manager, called. Emily, I wanted you to hear this before the company-wide email goes out. She cleared her throat like she was adjusting the weight of her words. We've decided to conduct a full audit of Mark's expense reports. Effective immediately, he's been placed on unpaid leave pending investigation. Unpaid leave, which meant panic, which meant consequences. I thanked her, calmly, professionally, like I hadn't just tightened the ropes around the man who betrayed me. My phone buzzed again this time, a text from Megan, my sister. Megan, are you home tonight? I'm stopping by with dinner. No arguments. Support doesn't always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it shows up with takeout containers. I replied, okay, thank you. By noon, another domino fell. Mark texted. I typed slowly, letting each word sharpen. You did. Block. I didn't need his anxiety delivered to my screen anymore. Let him sit with silence, he'd given me enough of it. While the storm brewed in Mark's world, I was busy building mine. I attended a workshop for real estate investors, the kind of room filled with sharp collars and sharper instincts. I took notes like my future depended on each bullet point, because maybe it did. During the break, a woman around my age approached me, coffee in hand. "I love your focus," she said. "First time here?" "First time doing a lot of things," I replied with a small smile. She laughed. "Well, welcome to the world where we don't wait for anyone to save us." Her name was Dana. She owned 3 rental properties and talked about equity the way some women talk about diamonds. There was something addictive about her confidence. When the session ended, she handed me her card. "If you ever want a partner on a project, call me." She winked. "Women like us should build wealth, not excuses." Women like us. That phrase stuck like a spark. And when I arrived home, I saw a black car parked across the street. Mark, sitting inside, watching the house that wasn't his anymore. Pathetic. I went inside, checked the camera feeds. Yes, he'd been out there for hours. I downloaded the footage. Evidence. Again. He wanted to intimidate me. Instead, he documented his own desperation. I opened the blinds just enough for him to see me dressed sharp, standing tall, owning the night. Then I closed them again. I didn't owe him a show. Dios. Megan arrived around 6 arms full of pasta trays and garlic bread. The moment she stepped in, she hugged me so tight my ribs protested. Not pity. Protection. "I'm here now," she said. We ate at the dining table where lies used to be served. This time, laughter joined us instead. Halfway through dinner, she leaned in. "Emily, you're glowing." Grief never made me glow. Vengeance did. "I'm getting my life back," I said simply. "And he's losing his," she replied, clinking her glass against mine. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Sisters can read the ashes. When she left, the house was quiet again, but this quiet felt earned. I looked at the camera feed one last time, Mark still in his car alone, with the choices that finally cornered him. I powered off my phone and went upstairs, every step echoing ownership. Tomorrow the fight would intensify. Tomorrow the world would know the truth about him. But tonight I slept with the confidence of a woman who has already won. The next morning arrived with a headline. Teresa from HR had hinted at it, but seeing it live felt surreal. Construction manager placed under investigation, company statement confirmed. There was Mark's name in black and white beneath the words, misuse of company funds. He was the kind of man who cared more about image than integrity. Now his image was the one thing he couldn't protect. As I read a notification popped up, a voicemail from an unknown number. I pressed play. "Emily, please call me back." Mark's voice, thin, unsteady. "They're talking about firing me. I can't lose everything." I set the phone down and took a long sip of coffee, the taste of justice freshly brewed. "You should have thought of that before turning our home into adultery HQ. And by noon, another strike of lightning found him. Claire called. "Mark is pushing for mediation. He wants to avoid court." I smiled small and sharp. "Of course he does. He's running out of walls to hide behind." She chuckled softly. "Do you want to mediate?" "Yes," I said. "I want him to watch every document slide across that table." Claire's tone warmed. "You're very good at this." "It's just accounting," I replied, with better music. Semi. That evening, my new investment friend Dana invited me to a networking mixer. I stared at the text for a long second, remembering the version of myself who always said no, because Mark needed me home. But now the only person I obeyed was me. I replied, "I'll be there." I dressed in a fitted black dress Mark once said made me look too confident. Tonight, that was the point. I walked into the event like a woman entering her next life because that's exactly what was happening. Dana waved me over and introduced me to others, designers, brokers, contractors, people who built things, people who made decisions, people who saw potential in rubble. While sipping a cocktail, I noticed a couple looking at me curious. "Are you the woman from the article?" the woman asked gently. "Article." I pulled out my phone, heart steady. It wasn't just a company headline now. A local journalist had connected the workplace scandal to a divorce filing citing documented infidelity and financial misconduct. Mark's downfall was trending. The woman touched my arm. "Good for you," she said. A lot of us stay quiet. I wasn't quiet anymore, I was heard. Later, stepping outside for fresh air, I saw a text from an unknown number. But I didn't have to guess. Mark, please, be careful what you say to people. We can still come out of this looking civil. Civil, from the man who burned civility in my basement. I typed, "You care about reputation. I care about truth." Block, again. I didn't feel petty. I felt protected. Onde. That night, as I drove home, streetlights reflected off the windshield like applause. A week ago, I was silently drowning. Now the world could see the ocean he threw me into. And I had learned to swim with my fists closed. I parked, walked into my house, and stood in the living room where he once looked at me with indifference. Now he looked at me in headlines. Justice doesn't always arrive with gavel strikes. Sometimes it arrives as public knowledge. Before bed, I checked the camera one last time. Mark wasn't in his car tonight. He was gone. And for once, that absence felt like peace instead of abandonment. I crawled into bed the center of it and stared at the ceiling. I am not rebuilding from ruin. I am expanding from truth. There's a moment in every storm when the wind shifts, when the one who caused the chaos begins to fear the damage he created. That moment came for Mark on a Thursday morning. I was finalizing documents for mediation when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, of course. Then curiosity won. It wasn't Mark, it was Sophie. "Emily, please call me. I need to talk to you." Need interesting. Not desperation for love, desperation for survival. I deleted the message without a second thought. What she needed no longer concerned me. Later, while reviewing Mark's financial trail, I found another transaction that didn't match the rest, a large cash withdrawal near a medical building downtown. I dug through his email archives and found the confirmation. A clinic specializing in sperm donor consultations. So that's why Sophie stuck around. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was trying to replace me. Except his infertility report told the truth. Mark wasn't building a future with her. He was selling her a lie. Poetic. The next strike of karma came from his workplace. Teresa from HR updated me. His company had suspended his corporate card and revoked his project access. Rumor spread fast, the kind that stains reputations permanently. Co-workers whispered, contractors avoided his calls, clients asked to be reassigned. Mark's world was shrinking, and I wasn't lifting a finger. That evening, Dana invited me again, this time to see one of her rental properties, a walkthrough. I took notes, asked questions, pictured budgets and returns. It felt like a new kind of intimacy, one with success, not with someone who took me for granted. "You're good at this," Dana said as we stepped outside. "You think like an investor, not a homeowner." I smiled. I'm learning fast. The truth, I wasn't learning. I was remembering. Before marriage, I was ambitious. Before heartbreak, I was powerful. Mark didn't create my strength. He covered it up. Now the cover was gone. So, when I drove home, Mark's car wasn't lurking across the street anymore. He had abandoned surveillance, probably because humiliation weighs heavier than hope. But Sophie, she wasn't ready to let go. I found her sitting on my porch steps, hugging her knees. "Emily," she said, as if we were friends meeting at brunch, "I know you hate me, but can we talk?" I didn't move closer. I stayed standing, height as a boundary. "What could you possibly say to me?" I asked. She wiped her eyes, messy mascara streaks ruining her innocence act. He told me you couldn't have children," she whispered, "and that you gave up, that you pushed him away." I didn't know. "You didn't care," I corrected. She flinched. "He promised we'd start a family together," she said, voice cracking, "but now he won't talk to me. He's blaming everything on me." I looked at her, the woman who helped destroy my marriage, and felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, nothing. "Welcome to knowing his truth," I said coldly. "I lived with it for years." She sobbed harder. "He's not who I thought he was." "He never is," I replied. "That's how men like Mark survive." She stood hesitating. You won, Emily. You got what you wanted. No, I said. I got what I deserved. There's a difference. Sophie stepped away barefoot on the cold concrete and disappeared into the night. A temporary character exiting her temporary role? As I entered my home, I checked the camera feed habit now and saw Sophie walking toward a bus stop, shoulders shaking. The old me might have felt bad. The new me knew better. She wasn't my problem. She was his consequence. And Justice was just getting warmed up. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the kitchen island, and stared at the folder that had become my weapon. Tomorrow was mediation. Tomorrow Mark would face the version of me he never believed I'd become. A woman who doesn't beg, a woman who doesn't break, a woman who doesn't lose. Because the moment he betrayed me, the war stopped being emotional. It became strategic. Mediation day arrived like a court summons for the soul. I dressed with intention. Charcoal suit, clean lines, hair pulled back. Not flashy, not emotional. Professional, the kind of appearance that says, I know exactly what I'm doing. Mark arrived late, disheveled, shirt wrinkled, eyes hollow. He had aged 10 years in 1 week. Sophie wasn't with him. Good, consequences should be faced alone. He tried to smile, a desperate attempt to trigger nostalgia. Hi, he whispered. I nodded once. Claire guided me to our side of the table. Mark sat across the physical distance, matching the emotional crater. The mediator opened with basic rules. Mark's lawyer cleared his throat. Claire folded her hands neatly, ready to strike with elegance. Then the discussion began. Property, assets, financial misconduct, infidelity. Mark tried to argue. Claire slid a document across the table. Hotel receipts, screenshots, camera evidence, even the late-night porch clip. Mark's face collapsed with every page he read. You recorded me, he hissed. You recorded yourself, I replied. I just pressed save. His lawyer leaned in and whispered urgently. Mark's jaw clenched. Claire spoke calmly. Given the evidence, Emily is entitled to primary residence disproportionate asset division and reimbursement of marital funds used to support the affair. Disproportionate, Mark barked. You want more than half. No, I said. I want what's fair. I pushed one more paper forward the medical report. He froze. You knew I said voice low but lethal. You knew the infertility wasn't my fault, but you let me drown in the guilt alone. Even his lawyer looked at him differently now. Mark covered his face with both hands. Emily, please. No, I interrupted. Your apologies are always too late and too cheap. Claire slid the final proposal across the table. This is our settlement request, she said. We can negotiate, or we can take it to court. I don't think your client wants that level of exposure. His lawyer didn't even look at him. He just nodded and said, We'll sign. Just like that, a decade-long marriage reduced to a signature in ink. Mark's hand shook as he wrote his name. Mine didn't. When it was done, he looked up at me, broken. Was any of it real, he whispered. I thought of the nights we dreamed together, the mornings we tried again, the day we lost our child. It was real, I said, until you decided it wasn't. He closed his eyes, a man finally seeing the ruins he created. I stood, gathered my folder, and walked away. Not with relief, with reclamation. Yes. That evening, I sat in my quiet home with a glass of water and a printed copy of the settlement. Not a trophy, a receipt. Proof that I paid for my freedom with truth. Sophie had texted twice more. Blocked. Mark called again. Blocked. The world I escaped still tried to reach me, but I didn't live there anymore. I stepped outside onto my porch, letting the cool night air wrap around me. The sky was clear, no storm in sight. A car passed slowly, headlights sweeping across my lawn like a spotlight, welcoming a new act. Tomorrow, the rebuilding would begin. Not from rubble, from foundation. Because I didn't lose a marriage. I removed a lie. And the life I was about to build, it wouldn't be defined by who stood beside me, but by who I finally became. There's a strange quiet that comes after a war you didn't start but decided to finish. In the weeks after mediation, my life didn't magically turn into a movie ending. There were bills to reorganize, documents to sign, signatures to notarize. I still woke up some mornings with the phantom memory of another body in the bed. But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer waiting for someone to choose me. I was choosing myself every day. The decree came through on a Tuesday morning. Divorce finalized, Claire's email said. Attached was the final order. The house was mine, the accounts mostly mine, reimbursement for funds spent on the affair, and a formal note about his misconduct and infidelity. It didn't feel like victory, not exactly. It felt like the final page of a chapter I'd been trying to end for years. I printed it, held the pages in my hands, not shaking, just steady. Then I looked at the basement door. For weeks I'd avoided opening it. I'd cleaned upstairs, repainted the bedroom, rearranged the living room. I'd taken Claire's advice, started a small side LLC with Dana to look at our first potential flip property. But the basement remained untouched. A tomb, a crime scene, an unanswered question. Today that changed. I walked over and put my hand on the knob. The wood was cool under my fingers, like it had been waiting. "Let's see what's really left," I murmured. I opened the door and flipped on the light. Everything was exactly as I remembered from that first night, only emptier. The wine stains had dried. The candle holder sat cold and dusty. The couch looked pathetic, without bodies on it, just fabric and bad decisions. I moved slowly around the room, noticing things I hadn't before. A small scuff on the wall, a hair tie on the floor that wasn't mine, an old hoodie tossed over the back of a chair. Then I saw it, a box shoved half under the stairs. Mark had never been good at hiding things properly, not from someone who knew where clutter likes to live. I pulled it out and sat on the floor with it. It wasn't locked, just flimsily taped shut, as if even his secrets were lazy. Inside were papers, old notebooks, a few photo prints, receipts he hadn't thrown away, not the ones I'd already found, but older ones, more hotel charges, more bar tabs. The affair with Sophie wasn't the first. Of course it wasn't. There were dates that went back 2 years, some names scribbled in margins, phone numbers, a hotel rewards card I'd never seen before. I let out a slow breath and laughed once quietly, not from humor, from the absurdity of thinking I'd ever had the full story. He'd been rehearsing betrayal long before the performance I caught. Underneath the mess of receipts was something else, a small notebook. Not his handwriting, Sophie's. I recognized the round loops from one of the cards that came with those trash can flowers. I opened it. The first couple of pages were full of hearts and initials and sickly sweet fantasies. Our future house, baby names, wedding plans, once he leaves her. I almost closed it there. Then I saw my name. Emily. The tone shifted. He says she's cold, controlling, always counting money. No fun. He said she refused to try IVF because she's scared. He said she made him feel like a paycheck. Lies. All of them. But believable lies. The kind that make other women comfortable sleeping with someone else's husband. On one page she'd written, "Sometimes I wonder if he's telling me the whole truth. Sometimes I think he's using me to escape himself." I stared at that line longer than I meant to. So even his accomplice had seen through him eventually. At the back of the notebook was a short note, different ink, sharper handwriting. Not Sophie's, his. If she finds out, I'll say it was a mistake. If that doesn't work, I'll tell her she pushed me into it. Strategy, on paper. I didn't feel crushed reading it. I felt confirmed. The man I'd been grieving wasn't just flawed. He was calculated. I added the notebook to my folder of evidence, not because I needed it for court anymore, because I wanted a record of the man I almost wasted a life on. Then I did something I hadn't expected. I sat in the middle of that basement on the very floor where my marriage died and let myself remember the version of him that used to hold me, make me laugh, dream with me. For a moment my throat tightened, not for who he was, for who I thought he was. Grief for a ghost. "I forgive her," I said out loud, the words surprising me. Sophie had made her choices, yes, but I wasn't going to carry her weight too. "I forgive me," I added softer, "for staying too long, for believing too much, for blaming myself for his emptiness. I don't forgive you, I finished thinking of him. Forgiveness was not a gift he'd earned. But I did something better than forgive him. I let him go completely. I stood, walked over to the light switch, and took one last look around. Then I turned it off. For real this time. Not as an escape, as closure. The basement would not be a shrine to betrayal anymore. It would be storage, or maybe a home office for my new business, or a workout room, or a rental unit someday. Anything but sacred ground for a man who didn't deserve the floorboards. Upstairs, my phone buzzed. Dana. Got the preliminary numbers on that duplex. Want to look at them together over coffee. I replied instantly. Yes, let's talk. A few minutes later, another message came in from a different number. Not Mark's. The name read Ethan, Dana's friend. We'd met briefly at the mixer. Soft brown eyes, easy smile, spoke with respect, and asked real questions, not just about my divorce, but about my goals. Hey, Emily, Dana mentioned you might join us on the next property visit. If you want, I can walk you through some of the structural stuff. No pressure. No pressure. I smiled at the phrase. For the first time in a long time, a man was offering something without expectation attached. I didn't read more into it than that. I wasn't ready for love. I was barely ready for lunch. But I was ready for easy. Sure, I typed back. I'd appreciate that. I set the phone down, walked to the front window, and looked out at the life I was stepping into a street I once thought I'd walk down holding Mark's hand until we were old. Now I'd walk it on my own feet. Maybe someday with someone who knew how to cherish, not consume. Maybe not. Either way, I'd be okay. Because the real reversal wasn't that Mark lost everything. It was that I finally understood I had never needed him to have anything that mattered. Not my strength, not my intelligence, not my future. He was just a man who tried to dim a light he didn't create. And in the end, that light is the only thing left fully mine. Peace didn't arrive as a grand scene or a dramatic realization. It arrived in ordinary ways, a quiet morning, a clean coffee mug, sunlight slipping across the hardwood like it finally felt welcome again. 3 months had passed since the divorce was finalized. Autumn leaves were shifting from green to gold outside my window, and life had settled into a rhythm that felt earned. I still had hard days. Days where a shadow of memory brushed my ribs from the inside. Days when the house felt too large, like half of it echoed with conversations that no longer existed. But those days were fewer now. They no longer ran my life. They simply visited and left. Today I was heading to meet Dana and Ethan at a duplex we were planning to bid on together. A real investment, a real future. My future. Before leaving the house, I stopped at the hallway mirror. The woman looking back wasn't a stranger anymore. She looked capable, even confident. And finally, I recognized her. I grabbed my bag and keys when the doorbell rang. A small startle. I checked my camera feed out of habit, but the figure on the porch wasn't a threat. It was my sister Megan holding a long rectangular package wrapped in brown paper. She grinned when I opened the door. Special delivery. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." The box held a framed piece of calligraphy, elegant, minimal. "The woman you are becoming will cost you people, places, and things. Choose her anyway." I swallowed hard. "It's your housewarming/new life gift." She brushed my shoulder. "And yes, you earned every word of that." I hugged her because sometimes the strongest thing we can do is allow someone to hold us up for just a moment, just a breath. She stepped back. "Proud of you, Em. Call me later, okay?" "I will." She left, and I set the frame carefully on the entry table, exactly where I would see it every time I walked out into the world and every time I came home to myself. The drive to the duplex took 15 minutes. Ethan was already there, leaning casually against his truck, going over preliminary notes. "Morning," he said with that easy smile of his. "Morning," I replied, returning it and meaning it. Dana waved from the front porch. "Our heiress has arrived." I laughed, actually laughed, the sound real and round in my chest. We walked through the property, 2 units, solid structure, good neighborhood, cosmetic upgrades needed, possibilities everywhere. "This could be our first flip," Dana said. "You take the lead on the numbers. I'll handle contractors." Ethan added, "And I'll make sure we don't buy a structure that collapses at the first sneeze." A team, a good one. I nodded. "Let's do it." Ethan looked at me for a second longer than someone strictly business would, not intrusive, just noticing me stepping into a life where I belonged. "We should celebrate," he said. "Coffee on me." Coffee would be nice, I admitted. Not a date, not a promise, just room. Room for the possibility that life could still surprise me in tender ways. Dendriki. We walked to a cafe nearby. Light chatter, fresh pastries, and a piano playing softly in the background. I ordered an Americano Old Habit, and Ethan raised a brow. "I pegged you for a cappuccino person." "I used to be," I said. "Turns out I like my coffee honest." He smiled. "I like that." We found a small table near the window. For a moment, I thought about the past, not with longing, but with clarity. Mark had once promised me that love was a shelter. Turns out, shelter isn't always safety. Sometimes it's a locked door in a burning house. Ethan tapped the table with his fingers, bringing me back. "So tell me something," he said. "What's the first place you want to travel once this project's done?" Travel, the future, prospects, words I had forgotten I had the right to. "Somewhere with history," I said. "Somewhere that rebuilt itself. Maybe Lisbon or Prague." "Then that's where you'll go," he said simply. "Not we, you." Respect, the rarest form of affection. Before leaving, Dana squeezed my shoulder. "Welcome to the winner's circle." I didn't reply. I just let myself feel what she meant. That night, I returned home with takeout and a sense of direction stronger than any map. After dinner, I hung Megan's framed gift by the stairs, the new heart of the house. Then I walked to the basement door. Not avoiding, not scared. I opened it, turned on the light. Instead of betrayal, I saw potential. This room would become a rental unit in the spring, the first asset of my real estate business. The place where everything fell apart would now be the place where everything began. Poetic justice isn't loud, it's practical. I smiled, small, satisfied, and turned the light off again. Upstairs, I curled on the couch, scrolling through photos of Lisbon as the moonlight stretched through the window. I imagined myself standing by the Tagus River, not as someone who survived pain, but as someone who moved beyond it. I breathed in, slow, steady, mine. Peace didn't arrive like fireworks, it arrived like this. A home without fear, a future without apology, a heart without permission needed. I closed my eyes. The story wasn't about a man who betrayed me, it was about the woman who refused to betray herself. And the best part, the story wasn't over, it had just finally begun. If my story spoke to a part of you, take a moment before you go. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and if you'd like to hear more stories like mine, please subscribe. You might just find strength in the places you didn't know were broken.